Hello and welcome back to the deep dive. I'm genuinely pumped for today because we are doing something a little bit different.
We are.
Usually we're tackling, modern tech or business trends, but today we are going way into the archives. But before we get started with all that, I have to do the official housekeeping.
Oh, yeah. The fun stuff right at the top.
Exactly. Just so everyone knows, this podcast is distributed free of charge on all major platforms for educational purposes. We are here to learn, to explore, and frankly, just have a good time doing it.
And honestly, today's session feels less like a classroom lecture and more like we're just hanging out in the living room in upstate New York in the late 60s.
Totally. That is exactly the vibe we're going for. I've got my metaphorical feet up on the coffee table, so don't tell my wife, and we're just chilling.
Oh.
We're diving into the weird, the wonderful, and the surprisingly practical advice from a non-physical entity.
It is a really good vibe.
Definitely.
And it's actually appropriate for the material, too, because the material itself is all about learning how to relax, but in a very radical way.
Right. So let's just set the stage for you. We are cracking open session 347 of the Early Sessions, Book 8 of the Seth material.
Recorded on June 19, 1967.
A Monday night. And let me tell you, if you think you know what a vacation is for you, you are about to have your mind blown today. Because according to this session, a vacation isn't just about sipping margaritas or getting a tan. It is literal shock therapy for your soul.
It is a really strong choice of words, isn't it? Shock therapy.
It really is. And we're also going to talk about why peanut oil, specifically warm peanut oil, might be the actual missing link in your wellness routine.
And why you should never, ever put it in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
Which is a very crucial detail.
Right. Do not chill the peanut oil. Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting with this idea of the art of pattern breaking. To give people some context, Rupert, that's Jane Roberts, the woman who channeled Seth, has been having a pretty rough time physically.
Right. She's dealing with what looks like rheumatoid arthritis symptoms, joint stiffness, swelling, general difficulty moving. It's been dragging on for a while, and she's feeling pretty stuck.
And usually when we get sick or even just severely burnt out, our instinct is to hunker down. Like we just want to stay in bed. We want to be in our own home with our own stuff.
We want the comfort of the familiar because it feels safe.
But Seth comes in and says absolutely not. He is pushing hard for a change of schedule, and not just a little tweak like sleeping in. He says, quote, "The breaking up of patterns is also beneficial."
This is where we really have to look at the psychology of routine. Seth isn't just saying, hey, go have fun. He is diagnosing the routine itself as part of the illness.
That's a heavy concept to chew on. So you're saying my daily routine, wake up, coffee, commute, work, sleep, could literally be keeping me sick.
Exactly. Think about it. We are creatures of association. You walk into your kitchen and your brain knows it's time to eat. You walk into your office and your cortisol spikes because your brain knows it's time to stress out.
So if you're sick at home, every single time you look at that one chair where you sit and feel pain, your brain just fires off the pain neurons.
Precisely. The environment becomes this closed feedback loop. It constantly reinforces the identity of, I am the sick person who lives in this house.
And that's exactly why Seth uses this intense phrase, shock therapy. He says travel and camping act as shock therapy.
Now, in 1967, shock therapy, or electroconvulsive therapy, was a very real, very intense psychiatric treatment. It was about using electricity to induce a seizure to forcibly reset the brain chemistry.
It was violent.
It sounds bad, like really objectively bad.
But Seth is completely reappropriating the term here. He's talking about a psychic jolt. He says these trips force a stir of thought and psychic activity.
So he's saying you need to jar the system. You need to essentially shake the Etch-a-Sketch.
That is a perfect analogy. If you stay in your house, the drawing on the Etch-a-Sketch just gets deeper and deeper lines every single day. You need to shake it to clear the screen. Seth says these trips will automatically interact against any kind of rigidity.
Rigidity. That is the ultimate enemy here, isn't it? Yes. Rigidity in the body, the literal stiffness Jane is feeling in her joints, is a reflection of a rigidity in the personality. If you physically move the body into an entirely new environment, a campsite, a hotel, just somewhere else, the mind has to wake up. It simply cannot run on autopilot.
Because you don't know where the spoons are.
Exactly. You don't know where the bathroom is in the dark. You have to be deeply present. And when you are present, you aren't ruminating on the illness in the exact same way. The autopilot finally turns off and the illness loses its footing.
So Seth is basically prescribing a total disruption of the status quo.
He calls it a preventative measure. He says you cannot afford not to take these steps.
You cannot afford not to. That is incredibly urgent language. It completely transforms a vacation from a luxury into a mandatory medical prescription.
It really does. He's telling Rob and Jane that if they stay home, the crystallization of the personality, and by extension, the joints will just continue.
Yeah.
They absolutely have to break the pattern to stop the hardening process.
Now, speaking of breaking patterns, there is one very specific piece of travel advice Seth gives here that I found absolutely hilarious, but also deeply relatable.
I think I know exactly which one you mean, the Saratoga trip.
Yes. So Rob asks, hey, can we go to Saratoga Springs? Which is a lovely place. And Seth says, sure, go to Saratoga. But then he drops this hammer, quote, Rupert should not visit his mother, however, nor waste any time wondering about the matter.
The don't visit mom rule.
It's so wildly specific. And look, we don't know the full backstory of Jane's relationship with her mother, but we can infer quite a lot from this one single sentence.
We really can. And it connects directly back to the idea of energy conservation.
Hmm.
Seth is saying that if the ultimate goal is healing, you cannot expose yourself to the old emotional triggers that contributed to the stress in the first place.
It's the ultimate boundary setting. Think about how many people go on vacation to visit family and come back way more stressed than when they left.
Almost everyone. Because you aren't actually breaking the pattern. You are stepping right back into your childhood dynamic. You immediately revert to being the child or the peacemaker or the scapegoat, and navigating that takes a massive amount of psychic energy.
And Seth adds this kicker, nor waste any time wondering about the matter.
Which is the hardest part. It's one thing to say, okay, I'm not going to see my mom. It's a completely different thing to actually stop feeling guilty about it.
Right. If you're in Saratoga sipping your pristine mineral water, but mentally you're just beating yourself up saying, I'm a bad daughter, I should be visiting her right now, have you actually left the pattern?
No, you haven't. You've just moved the pattern to a different zip code. You are stressed in Saratoga instead of being stressed in Elmira.
That is such a profound point for anyone listening. Healing actually requires you to be selfish in a way. You have to actively ring fence your energy.
Conservation of energy is the scientific way to put it. When you are healing, your system is under heavy repair. You simply do not have the spare voltage to run the Manage Difficult Mother program. You just don't.
So Seth is basically giving Jane a permission slip from the universe. Doctor's orders you're explicitly forbidden from engaging in this drama.
And notice he also implies they should keep up this away environment as long as the weather permits. Even just taking small weekend trips, anything to stop the personality from freezing back into that rigid state.
It creates a new baseline entirely. The internal narrative becomes, I am a traveler or I am an explorer instead of I am a patient.
Exactly. Identity shifts always follow the physical shift.
Which leads us perfectly into the next big theme we need to tackle today. Because even if you go on the trip and you successfully avoid visiting mom, you might still wake up feeling incredibly stiff. And that can be hugely demoralizing.
It can be devastating. You feel like you're doing all the right things and the pain is still just sitting there.
This is where Seth introduces the concept of the mind-body time lag. And honestly, this might be the most reassuring thing I've read in a very long time.
It is a concept that I think trips a lot of people up when they are trying to heal, whether it's a physical ailment or an emotional one. We are so conditioned to expect instant gratification.
So Seth starts talking about how Jane's mental state has already improved. He says, quote, the mental and psychic state is indeed radically improved. But, man, it's a big zister, but Jane is still feeling severe symptoms in the morning.
Right. And logically, Jane is probably lying there thinking, if I'm better mentally, why is my knee still hurt so much? Why am I still this stiff? Is the process simply not working?
And Seth completely breaks down this lag. He explains that there is a lapse here for physical expression.
Think of it like a massive cargo ship turning in the ocean. The captain spins the wheel. The decision is definitively made. The rudder moves underwater. But the actual massive physical ship takes a significant amount of time to rotate through the water.
That is a fantastic analogy. The sheer momentum of the ship carries it forward in the old direction for quite a while, even though the steering mechanism has fundamentally changed.
Exactly. Or you can think about astronomy. We look up at a star in the night sky. The light we see right now might actually be from a star that burned out 1 million years ago. We're literally seeing the past.
Wow. So my body today is basically just a snapshot of who I was last week or last month.
In a very real sense, yes. Seth uses this incredibly evocative term for it. He calls the current symptoms a ghost.
They are the ghost, you see. I love that phrasing so much.
It completely changes your relationship to the pain. If you wake up in pain and think, this is me, this is my permanent future, you panic. You tighten up and reinforce it.
You completely spiral. You think I'm never getting better, this is forever.
But if you view it as a ghost is just an echo. It's a residue. It naturally implies that the thing that caused it is already dead and gone.
Seth says these symptoms represent the vanishing power of the illness. They don't have the power to frighten you anymore because the main energy source has already been cut off.
That is the absolute key. The power source is cut. But the ceiling fan blades are still spinning just because of leftover momentum.
So for you listening to this right now, you really need to internalize this. If you are doing the hard work and you don't see results immediately, it doesn't mean you're failing. It just means the download hasn't finished processing yet.
Correct. And Seth connects this right back to the environment again. He talks about old CUE points. He spells it out, CUE.
Right, he says the everyday environment is filled with these specific cues.
We touched on this earlier, but your house is essentially a massive physical memory bank.
Like, I sit in this exact chair and I feel pain. I look at this specific coffee mug and I feel exhausted. I hear the mailman outside and I immediately feel financial anxiety.
Exactly. The environment itself physically holds the memory of the illness for you.
Sure.
That is precisely why the vacation is so critical. It completely scatters the cue points. When you are in a tent or a hotel room, you don't have the sick chair. You don't have the medicine cabinet of doom.
Oh man, the medicine cabinet of doom, I've definitely had one of those in my life. You open it up and it's just endless bottles of pills that constantly remind you that you're broken.
We all have. By actively changing the scenery, you shatter the loop. The ghost suddenly has nowhere to haunt. A ghost needs the old familiar castle to haunt right. If you take the ghost to a modern Holiday Inn, it just gets confused and dissipates.
That is a hilarious visual, a Victorian ghost totally bewildered by the hallway ice machine.
But it functionally works. The deep associations are broken.
There's another part of this time lag discussion that I found really insightful regarding energy. Seth talks about energy conservation again. He says that in the very beginning of Jane's recovery, all the mental energy was used just to, quote, maintain the status quo.
This is so vital for people to understand. Sometimes we feel like we aren't getting better and we get frustrated. But Seth is pointing out that the very first step of healing is just stopping the process of getting worse.
He explicitly says a complete stop was made in all destructive issues.
And achieving that takes enormous energy. It's like trying to stop a runaway freight train. You have to apply the brakes with absolutely everything you've got just to get the train to eventually stand still. Only after it stops completely can you even think about putting it in reverse to go the other way.
So if you are working on yourself and you feel like you've just plateaued, it might actually be that all your available energy is currently going towards simply stopping the bleeding.
Correct. The reversal process always happens internally first. Seth points out that the mental condition has not deteriorated. The subtle recovery has begun, even if the physical body is the absolute last one to get the memo.
I really think we need to print that on a t-shirt. The body is the last one to get the memo.
It would definitely save people a lot of unnecessary anxiety. If people truly realize that physical reality is just the caboose on the train, they wouldn't panic when the caboose hasn't reached the station yet, knowing full well the engine is already there.
That is such a helpful and grounding perspective. Okay, we're going to shift gears entirely now. We have to talk about the strange chemistry section. Because this is where Seth gets very specific and honestly a little bit weird.
Ah, yes. The infamous beer and milk cocktail section.
I mean, I just have to ask, was this an actual thing people did in the 60s? Did people honestly drink beer and milk together?
I really don't think she was mixing them in the same glass, like a stout black and tan, but with whole milk. I think Seth means she was actively consuming them in the same general time frame, maybe having a beer with dinner and then a glass of warm milk right before bed.
Okay, that makes slightly more sense. But still, it sounds pretty gross to my modern palate.
Regardless, Seth identifies this specific combination as a major culprit for the intense swelling and stiffness she was experiencing in her joints.
He says, quote, the swelling has to do with a chemical that encouraged a retention of fluid. And he specifically blames the interaction between beer and whole milk. But here's the part that I just love. Seth, who normally sounds so eloquent and articulate, actually starts stumbling over the chemical name.
It is a truly fascinating moment in the transcript. He stammers and says, peck.
Pectorillin?
Pectorillin, I actually Googled this to check. It does not exist. It sounds exactly like a Victorian cough syrup. Take a swig of Pectorillin for your consumption.
Right. And Seth even readily admits, quote, I am no medical man, which is uniquely funny coming from an omniscient, multidimensional entity.
So what is actually happening here dynamically? Is Seth just completely wrong?
This is where we have to fundamentally look at how channeling works. Seth is essentially sending a concept, a nonverbal block of information through Jane's brain. Jane has to rapidly translate that raw concept into English words she already knows or can phonetically approximate on the fly. So Seth is transmitting the chemical signature, and Jane's human brain is just scrambling through its dictionary to find a word that sort of fits the shape of it.
Exactly. It's a cosmic game of telephone. But Rob Jane's husband, who is taking the verbatim notes during this session, adds a really interesting footnote here. He acts almost like the forensic detective in this story,
Yeah, Rob intercepts this stumbling. He interprets that Seth was actually groping for the word purine.
which makes a massive amount of scientific sense. Purines are natural chemical compounds found in certain foods and drinks. And yes, beer is notoriously high in purines.
And when the human body breaks down purines, what do you get?
You get uric acid. And if your body produces too much uric acid or can't clear it out efficiently, it crystallizes
And where exactly do those sharp little crystals go?
directly into the joints, causing gout, intense swelling, and severe stiffness. It mimics rheumatoid arthritis symptoms absolutely perfectly.
Boom. So Seth, a disembodied personality, is basically accurately diagnosing a high purine diet issue in 1967, even if Jane's brain couldn't quite grab the exact word purine.
And he's connecting it directly to the milk interaction as well. Rob actually notes in the margins that he used his pendulum to test this specific dietary theory.
We should probably explain that briefly for the new listeners who aren't familiar with Rob's methods. Rob was really big into using the pendulum.
It's a classic dowsing tool. You hold a weight on a string, ask a clear yes or no question, and observe which way the pendulum naturally swings. Rob used it frequently to test whether certain foods were beneficial or harmful.
And his pendulum unequivocally confirmed that both beer and milk were bad for Jane. Interestingly, though, it said salt was perfectly okay.
Which is incredibly surprising.
Wow.
Usually, if you have any kind of severe water retention, the first thing a doctor screams at you is to stop the salt immediately.
Exactly. But Seth's diagnosis is highly nuanced. He says in this specific chemical equation inside Jane's body, the beer and milk created sticky residues that, quote, blocked passageways near the joints.
Blocked passageways. It's such a structural, mechanical description. It's basically internal plumbing.
It really is. He's describing a literal clogging of the lymphatic system or the microcirculatory system right around the affected joints.
And the logic follows that once they stop the input, stop consuming the beer and the milk, the body's system can finally start to flush those toxic residues out. But again, going right back to the time lag principle we just discussed, it takes substantial time to completely unplug the pipes.
So the broad takeaway for the listener here isn't necessarily don't ever drink beer and milk for everyone across the board.
No, maybe just don't do it anyway for culinary reasons. The real takeaway is to aggressively listen to your body's specific idiosyncratic reactions. Jane had a very specific body chemistry that reacted violently to that specific combo.
Right. It's highly personalized medicine delivered from the other side. Now, this deep dive absolutely wouldn't be complete without looking deeply at the emotional side of things. Because Seth never just talks about biology in a vacuum. He always talks about the deeply held feelings driving the biology.
The mind-body connection is always front and center in the Seth material. You can stop drinking the beer forever, but if you don't stop feeding the internal resentment, you will absolutely still be physically stiff.
And there's a really poignant, deeply human moment here about Jane's relationship with Rob. Apparently, Jane was feeling some serious heavy resentment.
She was indeed. It seems to ostensibly stem from, quote, nursery school hours, presumably related to their daily work schedule or some outside obligation they had to manage, but the root of it went much deeper than logistics. Seth reveals that she actually felt fundamentally unworthy of Rob's affection because of her deteriorating physical condition.
That really broke my heart a little bit reading it. She legitimately feared that Rob found her condition degrading.
It is a devastatingly common fear when someone is chronically ill. You naturally start to feel like a burden, you feel physically broken, and inevitably you project all that internal insecurity onto your partner. You lie there and think, I look terrible, I can barely move. He must be completely disgusted by me.
But Rob actually speaks up out loud in the middle of the session. It's remarkably rare for him to interrupt the flow of a session like this.
He does. He feels compelled to clarify the record. He states very clearly, quote, "I found his condition inhibiting, but only at times, and there wasn't any thought of degradation."
That semantic distinction is incredibly important. Let's really parse that out. Inhibiting versus degrading.
Inhibiting is a purely logistical, factual statement. It simply means, hey, we can't go dancing tonight because your knee hurts too much, or we have to walk much slower to the car. It physically limits an activity. That is just a neutral fact of the situation.
Right. It's an inconvenience. It alters the plans.
But degrading is a harsh value judgment. It fundamentally means you are worth less as a human being simply because you were sick.
And Jane was entirely assuming the value judgment.
Seth specifically points out that Jane, quote, exaggerated your feeling because of his mental attitude and felt he would be asking for alms.
Asking for alms, like a literal street beggar. She felt like she was pathetically begging for love because she believed she didn't inherently deserve it anymore.
Exactly. When we are at our absolute lowest, we assume everyone else views us as low too. We project our own intense self-loathing directly onto our partners. But Rob simply didn't see her that way at all. It was a massive, painful misunderstanding, completely fueled by her own physical insecurity.
It's such a powerful lesson for anyone in a relationship. We are almost always our own harshest critics. I was basically just thinking, yeah, the arthritis scheduling is annoying, but Jane was internalizing it as he utterly despises me.
And carrying that heavy emotional stress, that, quote, conflict on going to bed, as Seth calls it, physically tightens the body. It creates deep muscular tension, which inevitably makes the joint stiffness exponentially worse the next day.
Yeah.
It is all intimately connected. If you go to bed thoroughly convinced your husband finds you degrading, you're going to wake up physically stiff.
So the emotional clearing is just as critical as the purine clearing.
Absolutely. You have to aggressively clear the air emotionally to allow the body to release physically.
So let's recap the cosmic prescription so far. We have the shock therapy vacation to completely break the environment pattern. We have the comforting realization that current symptoms are just ghost symptoms of past momentum. We have the beer milk dietary purge. But Seth gives some other very practical, highly tangible advice toward the end here. We should call this section practical magic.
I really love the grounded simplicity of these specific remedies. It perfectly balances out the high-flying metaphysics.
First up on the list, the sun and the sea.
Absolute classics. Seth strongly advises reasonable daily exposure to the sun.
But he clarifies it's not just for the biological vitamin D hit. He says it's, quote, symbolically beneficial in the sense that the sun is light.
Seth is huge on the power of internal symbols. To the deep subconscious mind, light clearly represents clarity, vital energy, vibrant health, and revelation. So physically soaking up the sun is literally soaking up that potent symbolism. You are actively telling your subconscious, I am intentionally filling myself with pure light.
And the sea. He specifically mentions the seashore.
He states, quote, the sea is especially healing.
I feel like I personally didn't need a multidimensional spirit guide to tell me that going to the beach is healing, but it's certainly nice to have the metaphysical validation.
It definitely reinforces the core idea of getting away from the house.
Yeah.
But also, just think about the nature of the ocean. It is entirely fluid. It constantly moves. It endlessly changes. It's the exact polar opposite of the stiff, rigid condition Jane was currently suffering from.
It's the ultimate natural antidote to rigidity.
Yes, exactly. Simply sitting and staring at the rhythmic ocean continuously reminds the psyche of the concept of flow.
And then we have the peanut oil.
This is truly the one detail that listeners really need to pay attention to. If you take nothing else away from this entire deep dive, remember the peanut oil.
Seth recommends using plain peanut oil for physical massage, specifically for the arms, necks, shoulders, and knees. But he has one very strict non-negotiable rule about it.
Quote, the oil should not be kept in the refrigerator.
He is incredibly clear about this. Quote, it should be fairly warm.
And it makes perfect sense physically. Imagine vigorously rubbing ice-cold oil onto stiff, aching, inflamed joints. It would make your muscles seize up instantly in defense. It would cause a massive contraction.
It sounds absolutely terrible, frankly.
Warm oil gracefully penetrates, it gently soothes, it successfully relaxes the tight muscle fibers. But there is just something undeniably humorous about a highly advanced, multidimensional teacher having to pause his profound lecture and essentially say, by the way, Rupert, please don't put the massage oil in the fridge.
It just shows that he genuinely understands the practical human condition. He knows we do absent-minded things like storing our massage oil next to the mayonnaise.
He fundamentally wants the physical experience of healing to be deeply comforting. Healing shouldn't be a painful punishment. The sudden vacation is the required shock to the mind, but the physical treatment should be the gentle soothe to the body.
Right. Shock the psyche, soothe the body. Don't mix those two up. Don't accidentally shock the body with ice-cold oil and then try to soothe the psyche by never getting off the couch.
That is the perfect summary of the protocol.
He also briefly mentions yoga at the end.
Yes. Quote, some yoga exercises gently done.
It's really interesting that he only suggests introducing the yoga after the significant mental shift has already happened.
Yes. If you aggressively force physical movement while the mind is still locked in a rigid state, you might actually just cause more pain. You are actively fighting the body's current reality. But once the mental, quote, rubble is being cleared, as Seth perfectly puts it, the body is finally ready to physically move again.
The rubble is being cleared. That's a great evocative image. The internal construction crew is finally hauling away the debris from the site.
And there is a tiny, easily missed detail about Jane's left arm that I think is critically important here. Seth notes that the left arm is finally starting to show actual improvement precisely because a, quote, mental decision was made to work on the book.
Oh, wow. I nearly missed that profound connection entirely.
Yeah. Jane fundamentally decided to use the week away to actively work on writing her book. That firm mental commitment to creativity, to purposeful action, actively signaled the arm that it was time to get back on the clock.
The body strictly follows the purpose. If you give the arm a vital job, like writing a book, it suddenly has a compelling reason to heal itself.
Exactly. Without a driving purpose, the illness can just comfortably hang around. If the arm isn't strictly needed for writing, it can afford to remain stiff. But the exact moment the creative drive kicks in the body, it says, oh wait, we actually need this limb right now, we better fix it fast.
Man, that is incredibly deep. It directly implies that our physical health is intimately tied to our creative output and our underlying sense of daily purpose.
Seth would absolutely argue they're functionally the exact same thing.
So synthesizing all this, what does this actually mean for you? For the listener driving to work right now, or folding a mountain of laundry, or walking the dog?
I think the two massive takeaways are about cultivating patience and recognizing your patterns.
Patience with the ghost.
Yes. Deeply understanding that if you are actively making positive changes, the physical results might lag behind. But you absolutely cannot let that lag scare you. Don't let the scary ghost spook you right back into the familiar illness. Boldly recognize the ghost for what it actually is, which is just a fading echo of a past memory.
And the patterns.
Take a hard look at your life right now. Where are you overly rigid? Where are you just mindlessly reacting to the same old cue points? Where is your perfectly curated environment actually keeping you completely stuck?
Maybe you need to immediately book a trip to Saratoga.
Or maybe you just need to pitch a tent and camp in your own backyard for a night. Or drastically rearrange your living room furniture. Or simply take a completely different route to work tomorrow.
Just do whatever it takes to break the pattern. Shake the Etch-a-Sketch.
Exactly. Mildly disorient yourself just enough to force yourself to wake up to the present moment.
And hey, strongly consider not visiting your mom if she consistently stresses you out.
Seth's explicit orders. You literally have a doctor's note from the spirit realm excusing you from family drama.
And please go check your fridge for peanut oil right now. If it's currently in there, take it out immediately.
Let it warm up on the counter. Your knees will definitely thank you later.
It is truly wild how wildly practical this esoteric material can be when you dig into it. It's not all just sit on a cushion chant and float away into the ether. It's literally stop drinking beer with milk, go to the beach, and stop constantly worrying about what your mother-in-law thinks of you.
It is deeply grounded spirituality, which in my opinion is the absolute best kind.
Absolutely. Well, sadly, we are rapidly coming to the end of our time for this deep dive.
It really went by incredibly fast today.
It always seems to. Just a quick final recap of the main aha moments for you. Healing demands breaking the pattern. You have to aggressively shock the system out of its comfortable rut.
You have to confidently ignore the ghost symptoms. They are merely the exhaust fumes of the old problems finally leaving your bodily system.
You desperately need to clear up your unspoken misunderstandings with your partner because they probably don't hate you, they're just worried about you.
And seriously, do not forget to warm up the peanut oil.
We want to give a huge, enthusiastic shout out to the original source of this incredible wisdom. This whole conversation was based on the Seth material.
Specifically the early sessions. This was explicitly session 347.
And we absolutely want to credit the publisher New Awareness Network. These guys are the real deal, meticulously preserving this profound material and keeping it widely available for all of us to study.
If this particular conversation sparked anything deeply inside you, please do yourself a massive favor. Go directly to the source. Don't just settle for listening to us gab about it on a show. Read the actual books yourself.
You can find all of them and a whole lot more at the New Awareness Network website and bookstore. That specific URL is sethcenter.com/early sessions.
There is so much incredible depth in those pages that we realistically can't even touch in a single hour-long deep dive. We barely scratched the surface of one single solitary session today. And there are hundreds of them waiting for you.
Seriously, go check it out right now. sethcenter.com/early sessions. Support their amazing work.
Highly, highly recommended.
So here is my final provocative thought for you to chew on this week. Seth talked extensively about shock therapy being something as simple as just a change of scenery.
Right.
So what is one specific pattern in your life right now that has become so rigid it literally feels like concrete? Maybe it's your strict morning routine. Maybe it's the exact way you drive home from the office. Maybe it's the fact that you eat the exact same sandwich for lunch every single day.
Or maybe it's an internal thought pattern, a very specific worry that you just constantly loop on without even realizing it.
Exactly. What is the smallest, weirdest, completely out of character thing you could deliberately do this weekend to crack that concrete open?
Maybe intentionally eating a massive dinner for breakfast.
Or insisting on sleeping on the complete opposite side of the bed tonight.
Or deliberately driving a ridiculously convoluted way to work just to see new streets.
Whatever it is, proactively shock your system. See exactly what ghosts naturally disappear when you finally stop feeding them the exact same old energy.
I absolutely love it. Shake the Etch-a-Sketch.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We will catch you on the next deep dive.
Take care, everyone.